Society of the Snow.
Yours.
Your movie.
Me.
I feel cold already.
Yeah.
See, I already put my jacket on.
What's some?
Okay.
And we're back.
Alan,
Society of the Snow,
do
right?
your job.
And we're back.
Where's your song?
My song?
Dun,
We're back.
Okay, so welcome back this week. So now is
Society of the Snow.
yours.
Your movie.
Me.
I feel cold already.
Yeah.
See, I already put my jacket on.
My movie
I know you guys
is
watched me last week and a week before. I wasn't wearing the jacket. but-
okay. Society of the Snow. Sociedad de la Nieve. It's like this is a movie that was done many, many years ago, a Hollywood version of it.
72.
And this, yes, 72. And this is a modern version of it. It's a Spanish-speaking film. So in 1972, the Uruguayan Rugby team was traveling to Chile to play an exhibition game. They had to fly over the Andes and to get there. I think this was a very ordinary flight to go to
Yeah,
Chile.
it was.
Exhibition
Yeah.
game.
Most of the boys had never been out of the country. So it was pretty exciting for them. On October 13th, the flight starts quite normally, but as the plane is crossing the Andes, the plane crashes. Most of the passengers were killed as the plane was it was cut in half, like sideways, the tail to the body, right? By the mountains, by the mountain peaks. After a couple of days, the search party has stopped to wait for better weather to search. There were 40 passengers and 5 crew. At the end, there were 14 survivors, and they were eventually rescued on December 23rd. One of the passengers, I have no idea, Pedro, I'm just sidetracked here. The cinematography was amazing and terrifying. Pedro Luke captures the endless snow and the mountains that seem to create a different world. It's almost like you're on a different planet. There's no life there. There's nothing there. I mean, you can't even catch a bird or to eat. There's nothing there. So this is not a place where any kind of biological life could exist. It's like a different planet. They actually filmed a lot of the shots on the actual in this particular movie. They filmed a lot of the shots on the actual physical locations, not with the actors. Just kind of film the area, the
mountains,
the stuff. Yeah. Because believe me, you really couldn't. There is nothing but snow and mountains. There's nothing. Snow, mountains. And you're on a very high altitude, so you actually, oxygen is quite limited.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not in Kansas anymore. And that's kind of what this movie helps you understand. You are in a different environment, and you have to adapt. And that's kind of where you need to adapt because you're the only living thing there. There was cannibalism involved, and I think they explain it very well. And I think they also explain how difficult it was for the people, because they're basically nice Catholic
people,
boys.
yes, yes.
That's what they are. I really feel their survival had a lot to do with that they were athletes. it's not a movie that you go, oh wow, this is a fun movie to go to. It's kind of like it's kind of showing you what would you do in this situation. I mean, there's points when this is where, okay, I told you the cinematographer is amazing, because there's a point where they're going, yeah, they're like kind of happy, and I'm like, as a person who's from the cold, I'm like, don't do that. It's like, because they're gonna. I don't believe they necessarily created the avalanche.
Or you're talking about the avalanche?
But the avalanche scene, where they're all kind of buried in snow. It's like you are so claustrophobic. It's kind of it's just amazing the way that they really put you in their positions, and the philosophy of some of the people. And I have to say that, and you also are, is it Namu? Is it
Numa. Yeah.
He's the person who's narrating, but he's not a major person in it. So I thought that was interesting, that he's narrating the thing, and he is not one of the major survivors of this. So it's really a movie about human desire to survive. And that's what the movie's about. It's about how when in Rome, because there's nothing else to do. It's like, are you want to die or you want to live? And you have to kind of break all your societal taboos. You have to break, if you want to survive, because you are not there anymore. You're here. And here is nature, total survival. And that's what you have to deal with. And they deal with it. And you're like this the whole time. They're a team, like a rugby team. So they actually act like a team. You're not really sure about all the different people. They're kind of like, they're not important as individual people. It's kind of like as they work as a group. And I thought that that's really the amazing part about team sports. It teaches you to work as a group, and that's why they survived. Patty.
Well, the original movie was called Alive, and of the two, Alive was way better. But then remakes suck. And I'll tell you what made the difference. It's totally a survival story, and it's true, which I love survival stories, especially if they're true, because it shows the amazing capacity of a human being and what they can and cannot do to survive. The one bad thing in this movie is they all had white teeth.
That's interesting.
Well, they're young. They're young.
No. If you leave your teeth for a long time, you get that yellow thing. And if you're eating human flesh, it would yellow up.
But first movie, that's a small part of it, though. I mean, because it's not like
makes a big difference when everybody's sunburned and then you get perfect white teeth. I noticed stuff like that. But I felt, and they both follow the same line, both movies, and the thing of where they have to eat somebody, that's why they became kind of famous, because they had survived this, but they got really chastised for doing it because it's such a
they were
Catholic.
Ashamed. They were very ashamed of it,
very
which
Catholic,
they shouldn't have been.
And when they got back, that was a big no-no, and they got really hounded for it.
But people understood eventually.
But I felt Alive was better because it showed when they're climbing the mountain to try to get to civilization, you feel like you're climbing that mountain.
Is it like that one with Ethan Hawke?
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah, Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke
Josh
was in that
movie.
Hamill.
It's so funny.
And they look like
Diana Douglas.
And they looked at the end of it like, I don't know. It's like they looked like, to me,
Who?
the Alive.
Right.
They looked like movie stars. They didn't look like they'd gone through anything.
They didn't look emaciated or anything. They just
these
looked
guys
normal.
did.
I felt that about this movie.
No, this guy's they
I
did.
thought they thought they were going skiing in Colorado because the bright sun and everything. This one was so great, but
and the drama of how they find somebody in Alive. I don't think that's Ethan. Maybe I'm thinking maybe the one
Where's the
before it,
different one?
the original
Yeah,
one.
Well, there was
Which one?
one made in the 70s. So.
Yeah, maybe that's the one because
that's the one that was
Ethan
when
Hawke.
it happened. It happened in 72, and they made the movie in 73 or 74.
74.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was
that's
76.
That's the one I'm
Okay.
thinking of.
Okay.
Not the Ethan. I didn't even know because Ethan Hawke isn't in the one I'm thinking
Yeah, that
of.
was in 93, I think.
It
Yeah,
really shows the. It shows
is that the
godness.
one with Martin Sheen that's like alive 20 years later, where they go back? Yeah.
No,
No,
it's
no.
Ethan Hawke actually plays Numa.
Well, that's
how I
in
knew
the
it.
original movie.
Well, I was going to say, when you don't say original, because like I said, they made one in the 70s. This is
That's
in
the one I'm
93.
thinking of. Yeah.
The Ethan Hawke version was in 93.
Oh yeah, I'm not thinking.
I
of
think in
Ethan
the
Hawke.
90s or something.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Well,
We're talking
but that's
about
the
this
original movie.
No, say the original movie. They made one in 1976.
Well, original
in the
Suerte.
70s. It was Argentinian or something.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
in
it
South
was.
America.
It
I
was
said
Yeah.
original Suerte because they made a lot of Latino movies too.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not the movie
Yeah,
Alive. it's the original
let's,
one.
Let's talk about this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel the depths of what I felt with the original movie. The pain, the torture of having to eat your friend. And how do you go about doing that? When you think of the details involved and how these people got, and because they are a team, you're right. They all got together and I noticed how they interplayed with each other, which is pretty amazing if you're starving to death, everybody stayed pretty calm. I mean, like a team. You
They're
know
a
what I
team.
mean? Yeah. So I would say that the story itself is incredible. Incredible. And that these guys see it through is amazing. And when they do get discovered in any of these movies or they get found, it's such a relief because I can't even imagine how cold they must have been.
Yes, I know. They didn't really.
I was wondering about that because I haven't seen the whole movie, but in the early part of it, after their first night, there's one of the guys who's standing there in the real bright sun on top of the mountain, and he's just not wearing anything particularly foul weather gear. And I'm wondering if maybe because they were up that high, maybe it was hot during the day.
You know what? When you're up that high, like even at 12,000 feet, you are super hot.
Yeah.
The sun is super hot. It's
Yeah.
cold there.
And don't forget, it's the reflection off the white snow.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you've ever seen that, where you see skiers get sunburned, because of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Your turn.
Well, I've always avoided this entire story all my life. I was in high school, and Alive was such a popular book to read. Now, even though I don't know, was the book in 74?
Yes, it was.
I
Yes.
think the incident was
I read
72.
that
Then they
book.
wrote a book.
Yeah.
And
Pierce Paul
that's
Reed.
when I was going to high school, was in the mid 70s, and everybody was reading this book, and they were telling me all about it. And I said, okay, I don't need to read this book. It sounds horrific. But then again, they start doing a movie about it. No, I don't need to see it. Because I just have this one picture in my head of the 70s movie where you see somebody dragging one of the bodies out of the snow.
Right.
So it's like, no. And then they did the American version of it. And same thing. It's like, this is such a horrific kind of story. I really don't want to watch it. I have to admit, it was probably because of the cannibalism that was involved. Because that was probably one of the most famous stories of cannibalism that's ever happened in my entire life. I would say maybe Jeffrey Dahmer might be the second one.
But they had to do it.
Well, no. And
Otherwise,
that's
they
the
would've died.
thing. That's why I sort of always avoided it. But in my head, I always thought about it, that I know for a fact I will do the exact same thing they did if I have to survive. The problem I would say is, if I'm put in that situation, I don't think I'd want to survive. I would probably die because you're right about the cold. And that was the weird part. They're just dressed. They're chartered a flight. They have their suitcase. They have clothing and everything, but they don't expect to crash in this mountain. So then you're right. That's the first thing we were talking about. They're talking about, we need clothes because it's so cold. And yet you're right. Then they're almost like sun tanning on the top of the planes because it's so hot. Right. So that just tells you right there. It's almost how sometimes I complain about California. Oh yeah, it's like 7 degrees out. And then it drops to 50. It drops just 20 degrees and then I'm freezing. So And that's just 70, 50. Dealing with what they had to do was probably 7 degrees and then dropping to like
Minus
20 degrees
35.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'm like
That
that,
was
when it
one
drops down
thing.
to 72.
But then what happens is you're watching them, again, survive a crash. The first major thing of all these, about 26, I think, survived the crash, but some were injured. So then they have to take care of the injured people. Then you're right. They got to somehow survive. They have to find food, which is none. They can't. The one thing they have ample supply is water because they're collecting the water from like the snow that's melting during the day.
Yeah, they have water.
Exactly.
They're surrounded
So
by
that's
water.
a great thing is the
Yeah.
fact that they have at least that, because that's, I was always told that you can go like a week without food, but you can only go like 3 days without water.
No, you can go 3
Yeah.
weeks without. That's what they said. They can go
Oh.
3 weeks
weeks.
without food,
Okay.
but you can't go long
3
without
days
water.
without
Oh, it was 3 weeks without food. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Water's more
interesting. Because,
important.
and again, because you're right. I think because they were athletes that they did survive. And this is what the story is about. It's about survival. The reason I couldn't watch it literally had to do with the fact that they would have to, and you have to realize the people on this plane, not only is it their teammates, but it's like family and fans or something, right? The
Right,
hardcore
right.
people who love these people. And in turn, they have this camaraderie with these people, knowing that, and family members,
Right.
right?
But remember the scene when they're going, okay, if I die,
Right.
Yes.
you can eat me.
Yeah.
You can eat me. They
That was
all
choking.
kind of
That
yeah.
choked me up.
And see, and that's what surprised me is how emotionally attached, as hard as I found watching this movie and knowing what's going to go on and everything, it's like, oh my God, they're really sucking me into the drama, which is why I think this film has the reputation it does. Now, not having seen any previous versions of it, I will say this, that I can't judge that. Maybe if I had watched those, maybe I would have a different opinion about this film, but this, because you picked it, I had to watch this film.
Yes, it was kind of like, yes, if you remember, they're all really Catholic.
Yes.
And you take communion. And in communion, you eat the body of Christ and you drink his blood.
Okay.
And that's how they looked
Hold on.
at it. and that's how they
And
looked
also,
at
you
it.
have to also
And
think-
that's how they, yeah.
Also take in consideration that how young they are. They
Yeah.
Yes.
19, 20,
No,
21.
Yes,
exactly.
they're
I mean,
very
that's
young.
Well, like I
really
said,
young.
19,
And at the
20, I
physical
think they're
peak.
younger
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
that because they're
Yeah.
like a,
No, that's all they
they're
were.
the team, the national team, right? They're
I'm
the
like
national
21.
team.
Can I
Yeah.
color inside the lines?
because in basketball in soccer,
Oh.
right?
Well, they're rugby. They're rugby players.
the rugby.
Yeah.
You're still very young.
Yeah, you're very young.
You know what I mean? You're not below 20 usually.
But usually that's the one funny thing. The difference between soccer and rugby players is that soccer, usually they're sort of thin and can run.
Yeah.
Whereas
Rugby
rugby players
are
have to be a
big.
little thicker
They're full
because
players.
yeah,
it's
you
basically
got some meat on you.
it's close to being, like American football. It's not, but it's like that kind
Yes.
of
Right.
player. You
Yes.
need sort of big and
Yes.
you have to have stamina on top of it. But what sort of amazed me is that I will give it to that Enzo Vorgrinchik or Vorin. What was his name?
Well, that's easy for you to say, Juan.
Vorgrinchik. I don't know how you pronounce his name.
Come on, George.
He's the one who
Vorgrinchik,
played
wow.
Numa.
Come on, George.
That's
Well, no.
yeah, let's do that.
No, because it was funny because I thought, oh, is this a European name or is it a
Right.
Latino pronunciation? But what happens is he is Numa, and so he is narrating it. So Numa narrates throughout the entire film. His narration really touched me. That as I'm hearing this voice, regardless of what his character is going through, it's listening to that narration that as the film goes on, it's like I found that he really sort of humanized everything you're watching and puts it into a certain perspective that
And
it's like,
explains it.
exactly,
I thought
to
that-
which I agree with, because I do like the fact that, and I remember this when this happened, they said, oh, it's a miracle. And yet they're saying, oh, no, it's a tragedy. So people are arguing about what it is. But I thought, you're right. Watching this movie, I said, no, this was a miracle for at least those people who survived.
Absolutely.
That was
And it
truly
was a tragedy.
as an amazing, amazing survival story. So, I claim you're right, that there should be no guilt in them and what they had to do to survive.
Well,
and I'm sure, and one of the moments for me was when I think the mother hugs him and said, it was such a miracle that you're back. And it's like, I never even thought about something like that.
Right.
At the end of the movie, I'm watching this like, wow, you don't, especially a mother thinking her son's already dead, probably, right? Because it took them how many? It was like
72 days.
Yeah. That's phenomenal.
Amazing, yeah.
The
That's
fact that once you've
2.5
written them
months.
off as dead, that they have that. But there are so many great dramatic moments, I think, in this, whether it's, fixing a radio or even listening to radio, dealing with people who are sick. How do you survive this? I was really impressed and very touched by this movie. And I can understand why it did win the Academy Award, because this is such a unique experience. But sort of like Whiplash, this is not for everybody.
No.
You have to have a strong constitution, I think, to watch this. But if you want to see a great movie about survival, and like you said, that camaraderie, team, whatever, that, how they always say, if you have somebody watching your back, you can go through anything.
Yeah.
This is exactly what this means. And it was a really great experience for me to have.
I was
on that.
never bored.
No.
I was constantly in there on what was going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the scenes were kind of in this, what do you call it?
No, in the plane, basically.
Yeah, in the plane,
claustrophobic.
part of the plane that
Right.
survived.
Right.
Right.
And
The
they,
shaft.
and they were kind of like in there.
Right. And no, exactly. And look at that. Like you said about the sets or whatever how you want to call it. Because you're right. I think the photography was great. The editing was great. But it was the director. The director really chose what to do. You feel the cold. You are there with them. You feel the... even like their sense of just, we're all going to die.
But
you
remember,
get that when you're watching them.
As Canadian, I'm looking at them as, okay, they're from a very southern, Argentina,
okay.
a warm climate.
Well,
and
like
they're now in a very
Uruguay.
Cold.
Aren't they?
like Arctic climate,
Yeah,
right? One thing I noticed is they didn't put something on their
On
head.
their head.
Right.
They didn't put something on their head because they didn't know. Right? They didn't know how to deal with the cold. They didn't understand it.
They weren't going to be caught in the cold because that was the whole
It
thing.
never happened to them.
Exactly. They were going to Chile.
So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like how great that is that they're from like a huge warm climate and they go to this. I can't even. This would be hard for me. This would be hard for you. It would be like...
Right. It's somebody who goes like in Hawaii that gets trapped in the Antarctic.
Exactly. And they adapt.
Yeah.
Except in the Antarctic, there's no high hills to get warm.
Adaptation is survival. You must adapt to where you are. Like if I go to Portugal, I have to adapt to Portugal.
It does help that there's the South American and they already play in that environment.
Yeah, but they're not from a cold.
No.
They're not from the Andes.
No.
They're from
Uruguay,
Uruguay, which is totally hot. You know what I mean?
Do you have anything left? All I see him is scratching things out. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, let me say, we know when we were in Florida
Yeah.
with Kiva and Leslie,
Yeah.
I remember if somehow this conversation came up, and this was years back with Kiva, and I remember she said, Kiva, if you're watching, she said, if we ever get caught in that situation, I'm eating your ass. I was like, okay. So
I love Kiva.
Yeah. So basically, my notes. So this movie, well, it's a really good movie. It really put me there. And I had a little cold then, and felt like I was feeling it with them too. I was like shivering. The crash scene was really
Yeah,
well
that was
done.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it
That was
was
good.
really well done. It was like they say it's probably all the movies that have been done about this incident. This was the best crash scene where it really puts you there, because other ones missed certain things, and this one really took you there. You know, the way that they hit the ceiling and
Yeah.
then down and back this way. It's like,
Well, just all of a sudden, the back half of the plane is gone.
and it's scary. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, I mean, it's so scary. I was like, oh my god, I can't even imagine going through that. Just being like with a
No.
plane, just and
It's like,
and
thank God he died
and your,
fast.
and your
Yes.
friends are flying out the plane And it's kind of like it's kind of like war when you go into war and your friends. You see your best friend get shot in the head, he's gone. It's like you see the plane pops open, your best friend just flies out. So that was pretty rough. Like I said, the experience in the snow felt really real to me.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they were so religious added to the problem of cannibalism.
Yes.
So they felt they were gonna, eating people's souls. So they're going to heaven or whatever. Religion really became a problematic to the whole thing. But there's a one line that they say, the one person said that said, there is no greater love than that which gives one's life for one's friends.
Yeah.
And that allows people to each other, which I think might be a religious thing too.
I think it might be from the Christ thing of I give my body.
Yeah, my blood, the bread, cutting of bread, my bread is my body, and the wine
that's
is my
the crucifixion.
Blood. So that kind of is them into it. I thought that Numa, the character, was Jesus in a way.
Oh, really?
Says,
interesting.
Okay. Make sure my blood, even though he was having a hard time, he was the one that was really having a hard time eating people. But he was like to me, he was like the Buddha, the Jesus that wasn't really telling the story.
Yeah.
He was very wise for 22 or whatever he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The movie also shows to me, the will to survive, which shows that how we talk about in reality how humans. We're the weakest thing in nature. You think about bears and sharks and everything, and rhinoceros and
But even they couldn't live up there.
Huh?
Even they couldn't live up there.
But so we are the weakest
link
animal in the world, and species on Earth, really. And anything kills. Even a tiny spider can. So, but it shows that the will to survive. But we will survive things. You will whatever it takes, and also. Shows about adjusting to your environment, like you said.
Adapting.
If you live in the city, you have to. You know how the city works. You take the subway, with nut jobs or whatever. You adapt to surviving to that. If you live in rural Montana or whatever, you get your shotgun. You adapt to that environment. If you're suddenly in a
foreign
total animalistic environment like they were. Then you adapt to that environment, so you become an animal in a way. So they had to become that. So that shows that the humans have the ability to become to adapt. We have the ability to adapt to whatever environment we're thrown into, and unfortunately, that's the environment they have to be in. You have to be. Well, I was gonna say it's kind of like it's kind of like when you go to jail, you have to adapt to the environment too. So we just adapt to any environment that we have to be in. So. That's one thing about the humans have the adaptability. So, but yeah, the scenes. Wow, I'm almost like I said. To me, I was shaking in the cold watching the movie. I thought it was just greatly done. Yeah, that's what I can say about it.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to confess, I forgot that this movie was on our list. I remember about an hour before George was going to come and pick me up. I said, "Oh, wait a minute." I thought
this is not Frozen?
I thought American Fiction was the only movie I hadn't seen in this list. So I said, but I see what it's about because I had read the book by Pierce Paul Reed. I had seen the movie by Frank Marshall. And by the way, I believe that first movie was an exploitation film directed by Rene Cardona.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know who that is? Yeah. Okay, anyway. The book was totally compelling, and the movie was very good. Although it was directed by Frank Marshall, who's one of the producers of E.T., and he got John Peter Shanley to come in and write it with him, who had written Moonstruck. So it was definitely a Hollywood movie, but there were some wonderful actors in it: Ethan Hawke, Vincent Spano, whose career has never been what it should be. Sometime if you get a chance to watch Baby It's You, the John Sayles movie with him and Rosanna Arquette. But what this movie is about, and the other thing, J.A. Bayona, who is the director of this film, a few years back, directed a movie called The Impossible, which was about a family that was in Jakarta or wherever it was when the tidal wave, when the tsunami came in, and what both of those movies have in common is it's about people helping other people.
Yeah.
It's about people becoming communities because of the circumstances, and that is very appealing to me to see that. From what I saw here, I don't know that I'll watch more of it because I know the story. There wasn't anything that was like jumping off the screen to me in terms of the acting or anything like that. Not that there's not good, but there's other things that I want to waste my time on. And this is not. I don't know that this would be a waste of time because it's really good. In fact, J.A. Bayona did a movie that I'm sure is one of those ones that you love.
Which one?
I can't remember. If you could look him up, you'll find out. But he also did one of the completely anonymous Jurassic Park movies, and it's like these Jurassic Park movies. I can't remember how many of them they made. I can't.
The Orphanage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great movie. Impossible, great movie.
Yeah, he directed that, The Orphanage. Anyway, so I don't have all that much to say, especially since everybody else has described the entire movie and the history of everybody in it. But it's, from what I saw, very impressive. And boy, that he can direct a disaster scene like nobody's business. The tidal wave in The Impossible was mind blowing. The plane crash in this was mind blowing. They're just absolutely astonishing to see. So if you're into that kind of thing, well, watch those movies for those parts anyway.
Also, that movie was the Ethan Hawke one. It was done in the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
That's where it was
where they
filmed.
shot it. Yeah,
that's where they shot it. The Andes are not the Rocky Mountains.
No, that's for sure.
There's a totally different thing.
Yeah, the Andes were presented as a character in this movie.
Very much so, I agree.
When they were setting it up, I mean, they had like the long shots and everything like that, and you sort of got the idea of where they were. And the other thing I want to point out that nobody else has mentioned, the way that they were rescued, 3 of the guys just said, you know what? I'm tired of waiting. Let's go for a walk. Maybe we'll run into somebody. And that's what happened.
But also,
they went walking for days, and they finally
it wasn't quite like that.
They went walking for days and finally came to someplace where some people they were able to get through.
They planned this.
Well, see, in this movie, which by the way also is based on another book. It's not based on a live. It's based on a book. Society.
Yeah, it's a Spanish book.
2009 book. But that's the thing, is that they actually planned the walk. In fact,
And
what I love
exactly.
is the character just says, "Oh, are you ready to come with me?" He says, "Are you inviting me to die?" Or something to that extent. And I thought, again, in that situation, I get that completely.
Yeah.
Because it's like, whatever we do now, just be prepared to die, which is, I think, the mentality of when you're sort of accepting your situation. It's like, okay, I could die tomorrow. I can die tomorrow. What do I do now?
Right.
And also that what, like I said, that what to survive, and that, besides eating people and people you might know, that also when they go on a trek and they get to the top of the mountain and see what's left in front of them.
It's like nothing but mountain. It's nothing but snow and mountain for miles.
Right.
I just like the phrase "eating people you might know."
Yeah.
They're on a team together.
That was funny, George.
Jeez, I had a point, but I forget what it was.
Well, have you reviewed yet?
This is about this particular version of the story. Is this version of the story, they did intensive, the last 14 people, one of them had cancer and died, but he still gave they did intensive from their point of view, the not an objective point of view, from their point of view. They did intensive. I don't want to say interrogations. It wasn't
interviewing about their experience.
Yes, yeah. and they willingly gave it. Like a lot of them are like, one of them is an architect, a very famous architect. All the survivors did very, very well.
But you also mentioned a thing that they actually watched the film and how it affected them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Because basically, it's 50 years later.
This is their...
Did they eat the guy with cancer?
No, he just died recently.
Oh.
He landed.
I might draw the line there.
He's this is like, they
But you told me that they watched the film and they were very touched by it because they really felt like they said they were like
This is their
like
film.
it was
This
their
is
Right.
their
Story.
They said
film.
that
Exactly.
Not somebody talking
they
about
broke
the
down
film.
watching the film when they saw it.
Can you imagine all the flashbacks that must
Because
bring
it was
back?
so real.
Yeah.
No, that's
yeah,
good.
one of
then.
them's head
Yeah.
of the like soccer
know,
rugby
Russell Redskins,
organization. They all have really
became a
great,
doctor.
but it's a long time ago for them.
Right.
And they're doing it with hindsight. And I just thought it was really, we're not going to be stuck on the top of the Randys, hopefully. But we all have situations that are totally unexpected.
Yeah, it's like I'm stuck on the 4 or 5.
And
Oh yeah, you can
Trying to
compare
get into the
those.
lane when this guy doesn't want to.
Yeah.
and we have to adapt to it. If there are people with us,
It's like the
who-
Californians. So you
if
take
there
the
are
4 or
people
5 to the
with
10.
us who are used to working together, it just makes
easier.
it possible.
you're right, you hope
That's
that-
what made it possible.
You're right. You have to they were athletes that were in shape too. Because
Yeah,
I think
they
if it
were
was
in
just
shape.
a regular people,
Right. All
There's
the
just a-
regular
yeah.
people died.
Mhm.
That what do
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah.
All the regular
Yeah.
people died.
yeah, exactly.
So that was that. So that was my movie.
Shall I start?
And so if you're looking for like a challenge, watch it. So
Go, Patty.
Patty.
8.
I gave it a 6.
I give it a 9. It's not there.
I give it a 10.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be back.